This video will address a couple tips I have for multiple choice test taking, and then we'll review the questions that are posted on the Twin quiz, which you can still take even though the extra credit option is now ended. If you want to fast forward past the tips, you can feel free to do so. If you look at the headings on the slides, you'll see if you scan through, once it stops saying multiple choice test taking tips, you'll be at the questions themselves. In general, I think if you're interested in figuring out a new strategy to multiple choice questions, it kind of helps to understand the purpose of them and why I use them. They examine the breadth of the material, so it allows me to test all the different kinds of concepts we learned in civil procedure without having to do it all in an essay format. So while the essays are rich with plenty of issues themselves, it's very hard to get all that we covered in essay questions. And so it allows me to do this. So you should know going into the exam, there's a lot of coverage of many of the materials. That doesn't mean you'll see absolutely every issue tested, but you'll see more because of this option. I use them as well to determine what I call outliers for grading purposes. And by this I mean people who are on the very high upper end A and on the very low end as well. So sometimes a student is outperforming their classmates so significantly that I literally just cut them out of the curve and then curve the rest of the A's, A minuses, and B pluses on that end because I don't want them to pull the A's away basically from other people. In the sense that if I went with where their score was, it would suggest that others were doing significantly worse, and when that's not really the case, what's happening is you just have one student or maybe even two who are just doing exceptionally well. At the other end also, before I ever decide between like a D and an E, unless it's very clear to me in an essay, I look at the multiple choice to see which questions that student is getting correct and which questions that student is getting incorrect. And then we'll often look to see if they're missing the ones that I would deem as being like more of minimum competency questions, and I do include those in the exam, so there'll be some easier and some harder multiple choice questions, and that kind of helps me decide whether or not they should pass or not. The other aspect that you should know about my multiple choice question is I tailor them to each year, so you're not just getting a bank of questions that I ask year after year. And so you want to make sure that you reflect on what we have studied. I think it's fine and helpful to come across old outlines. I wouldn't use any kind of other questions to study for this exam other than the ones I've given you because they're the ones that most closely resemble both an essay and a multiple choice, the ones that you'll get from me. But sometimes someone else's outline is used by students, and that's fine, but realize that I changed the coverage because the law has changed each year, and it makes sense to think about how much time we have spent on a topic versus how much time maybe I spent on that topic in a prior year where the law might have been in more dispute or was heading in a different direction than it is now. What makes for a good multiple choice question? Well, black letter law concepts where there's clear principles often do, with clear application. What doesn't yield good multiple choice questions are things where there's unclear application, a lot of balancing tests that need to be applied, or where you have to make a significant amount of judgment calls. Now remember, you'll have to make some judgment call in the questions because I'll ask something, for example, if I ask like PJ in a multiple choice question, which I do, and I have done in the past, you'll have to make a judgment about whether or not it's appropriate. But in that same context, ones in which it's very unclear and you could really go either way is not something that yields a good multiple choice question. And I think if you understand these guiding principles, it will help you when you're trying to read through the questions. How I come up with multiple choice questions, if you're interested, is I decide the law I want tested based upon what I'm testing in the rest of the test. I then rate the question for difficulty, and what I do is I give it a point or two for each aspect of the law you would need to know to be able to answer it. The bar exam tends to have questions that I would rate between a 2 and a 4. 4 are being very unusual. Normally, they're about 2 to 3 points of law you would have to understand to be able to answer the question. In other words, they're not asking one question on one aspect of the law. There's generally some combination thereof. They generally focus around about a 2 to 3. My exams tend to go from 3 to 5, although I generally shoot for like 3, to be real honest. So it means you'd need to know 3 different things. So if you think about it, that's pretty easy to start hitting on if you get an application of a section of the statute. Let's think about like 1367. Supplemental jurisdiction. If the question required you to understand common nucleus of operative fact, the B bar, and discretion, you're already at a 3. Okay, so that's how I do it. I rate it by how many points of law. When I actually go to grade it, though, they all get the same value. So every multiple choice question is worth the same as all the others. Why the rating matters is I see a difference in questions, like when I go to just decide in the end, ultimately, whether or not I'm going to, cut that top grade out of the pack, or sometimes if someone isn't clearly like in failing range because of an essay, or in that like D range because of an essay, the multiple choice ones, I look to see, are they missing the ones that are ranked at 2 or 3? Then that makes me more concerned. Okay, but you're still going to get the same point for every multiple choice question. I design attractive distractions based on the law, and I'll show you a couple of them as we go throughout these answers today. But what I mean by that is I make answer options that seem like they could be the right answer because I use the law. So don't just scan the multiple choice question to see for correct statements of law. That is helpful if there's something that's incorrect, but I tend not to write incorrect statements of law because I know students pass those by. It's more of the ones where you're looking for something that the law is phrased in that way, and so I know it becomes an attractive distractor. The types of questions you will see in mine vary. I have multiple select, which is, you'll get a series of Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3, and then the multiple choice options tend to have 1 and not 2, 2 and not 3. You'll see a couple of them here. I'm starting to retire those more and more because the bar exam is starting to retire those more and more. But you do still see some of those because it just makes for good essay questions. They're frankly harder to answer, I think, than some of the other ones because you have to know all those points of law, but you'll still see a few of them on this exam. I also have your traditional choose the best answer from these options, and that is by far and away the most frequently tested on the bar exam, and so I tend to try and provide more of those. The variation of true and false options, where it's like a best answer option in that you select between A through D often, but the only difference is the call of question says which of the statements is true or which of the statements is false. Again, those ones can appear on the bar exam, so I still keep a couple of those in. Story problem with application. Again, these are on the bar exam, like all of the options you see here, but just like multiple select, the bar examiners have announced that they're starting to reduce the number of these, so I will as well. And these ones look like where you have a longer fact pattern and have 1 to 2 questions that follow it. You may still see one of those, but I'm also tending to weed those out because the bar exam is doing that as well. So my goal here is a couple things. I want to test the breadth of the material. I want to be able to determine those outliers and determine minimum competency. And here's where you see minimum competency come in when you're looking at the type of questions. I also am very concerned about making sure that you have enough kinds of skills under your belt that you feel very comfortable by the time you get to the bar exam. I realize civil procedure at the moment is not tested in multiple choice format, but I think given that I've got those other goals in testing it, the closer I make the type of question to the bar exam, the more helpful it will be to you in the long run. Timing issues. You should expect, I'm very similar to the bar exam, and that you need to be able to move through the questions at an average rate of every 2 to 2.5 minutes per question. I would strongly suggest, if you're someone who's typically takes more time on the exam, that either you start with the essay section or start with the multiple choice section, whichever one you feel comfortable with. But regardless, do not spend more time on either section, the essay or the multiple choice section, than is recommended by the fact pattern. So let's say in the 3-hour exam you have, hypothetically, because I have not adjusted this yet, but let's say hypothetically you have an hour to do multiple choice as recommended. You shouldn't spend more than that. Realize each of the multiple choice questions are worth the same number of points, so you should just move through them. If you don't know the right answer, getting a few wrong is not the end of the world, but spending 2.5 hours on a section that's only suggested as one, and then spending a half hour on the essay is a bad move. You'll actually lose a lot of points. I expect the sections to take about that amount of time, and I weight them in relationship to the amount of time I've suggested. So don't go in with a strategy that will undermine that effort. All right, how to approach questions. Many people have never given this much thought. And I think if you've had troubles with multiple choice questions in the past, having a true strategy and trying to practice it by using the multiple choice questions I've given you, even if you've taken the quiz already, is really important. So what I would suggest doing is reading the call of the question first, then skimming the answers and determining the law that this question is based on. Remember, I told you there's generally like 2 to 3 points of law. It may be in the same category of law, it may be in different aspects of law combined together. But you're trying to focus yourself before you read the question on the topic that it's addressing. And this is important because if you start at the top of the question, which is what most students do who don't do very well on multiple choice questions, is you're trying to anticipate or think about what area of law the fact pattern in the little multiple choice question is testing. And that is not very effective. If you think about this, this is going to be exacerbated when you get to the bar exam. In the bar exam, there's no such thing as a section of here's your evidence multiple choice questions, here's your con law multiple choice questions. What they do is they're all jumbled together, and you can't go back after you finish a unit and the time is done on that unit. And so if you have to sit there and think about drawing every single topic it could possibly be into your mind as you read through that question, that is just frankly exhausting and inefficient. So you want to be able to scan the answers, figure out what area of the law it's based on, and then only focus on that in your mind when you're reading through the fact pattern. And I think it's more important for our class, obviously these are all going to be civil procedure questions, but to focus on the area of CivPro. Is this PJ? Is this venue? Is this SMJ? Is this issue or claim preclusion? Is this the Erie Doctrine? Is this service? Is this notice? It really makes you focus on that topic when you're reading the question, and you will save yourself time and energy, which is just the two most valuable commodities you can have during the exam. After you do this, then read the fact pattern with the law in question in mind, and obviously select the best answer. In selecting the best answer, there's a couple things to watch out for. Always look out for extreme positions, like always or never. Sometimes this is the right answer, but it's not. It's very hard to meet if you think about it, that something is always true or never true. None of the above or all of the above. These ones people just kind of scan past. Again, it's difficult to meet either of these, but sometimes that is the right answer as well. So be very cautious before you pick none of the above and all of the above and always or never. But then ask yourself, is that really what it is? But just use caution. Those ones tend to not be the right answer in most questions. Until they are. So what you want to do before you answer this as the answer option is be very certain that there's no way any of the above can meet the answer, or that every single one of the options does meet it. Same with always or never. Inconsistent answers. When you're scanning the answer options in that first step, the second step of your approach I show you above, there's oftentimes answers that could not stand together. In other words, it can't be both yin and yang. And if you look through the answer options, you'll see that that's expressed in the answer options. So before you even read the question, you can eliminate or at least focus some things like if I choose A as one of the options, then D cannot also be my choice, especially if it's a multiple select. So just think about that going forward. All right, let's